Good morning, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan, and today is episode 162, and we are going to take a look at the Superfund sites located in the state of Montana. So this is very much swinging back to discussing the EPA just a little bit, because this does affect workers' rights, and it also affects safe working conditions. So needless to say, this kind of coincides with OSHA and things of that nature. But first of all, let me give a big shout out to my listeners, because as usual, you guys are awesome. I love to see you here. So a big shout out to California, Oklahoma, Virginia, Texas, New York, Pennsylvania, British Columbia, Illinois, Oregon, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio, Massachusetts, Florida, Alabama, District of Columbia, Colorado, Minnesota, Washington, Georgia, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Kansas, North Carolina, Nevada, Maryland, Michigan, Iowa, New Brunswick, Louisiana, Connecticut, and Manitoba. In terms of countries, the United States, Canada, the Russian Federation, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Slovakia, South Africa, Japan, Denmark, and Uzbekistan. A little bit of housekeeping here. So today is November 9th, and today there are a couple of things that are celebrated. It is National Louisiana Day, so God bless the lovely state of Louisiana. And then it is also National Scrapple Day. I'm not sure what Scrapple is. For some reason, it makes me think it is a board game, unless I'm thinking of Scrabble. I'm not really sure, but definitely some interesting things to celebrate. Now, in terms of a little bit of housekeeping here, just FYI, we do have a YouTube channel. Do check that out, The Endurance of Labor Laws. Please subscribe, like, and comment on our videos. We love to see you guys there as well. And it's good to see you always as usual. But let's go ahead and dive into this lovely podcast talking about the Superfund sites in the state of Montana. So as usual, I'm going to be listing off the ones that are current and active, meaning they are still toxic, still hazardous, still causing a problem to people and the environment as well as livestock, because this is very concerning, because as usual, when something affects humans, it also affects animals and vice versa, because we are in this together in terms of the environment, and humans are a part of the environment. And so these are the ones that I'm listing off first that are still an issue. They're active. They are still hazardous. And a lot of them have been sitting on this list since the 1980s or a little bit further back. So again, if you're new to this podcast, when we are talking about Superfund sites, these are very toxic, very hazardous waste sites that either A, were caused by the federal government, or B, caused by a company in the private sector. And regardless of who caused it, it is still an issue. So when it is caused by the federal government, for example, the United States Department of Energy or the United States military, whichever branch you want to go with, whenever the federal government causes a problem like this, it is directly under the umbrella of the EPA in terms of cleaning it up. When a Superfund site is caused by a company in the private sector, there are two options that the company has, if they can afford it. Option A is that the company clean it up themselves, and that's if they have the money to do so. If the damage is too expensive and the company cannot afford it, or if they are no longer around, or if they have gone bankrupt, then the property and the waste site that is hazardous, it goes under the umbrella of the EPA. So that land, in terms of the title and things of that nature and the cleanup, they are moved from a private sector company over to under the umbrella of the EPA. What we have seen time and time again when looking at these Superfund sites is that it doesn't look like there's a clear difference in terms of when a Superfund site is caused by the military or a private sector company. Whenever a site is caused by a private sector company that cannot afford to clean it up, and when that property goes over to the EPA, for some stupid reason, the federal government is not cleaning this stuff up. Strangely, the ones that are being cleaned up quickly, safely, and efficiently are predominantly being done so very effectively by the company that caused it. So, needless to say, whenever these projects or these Superfund sites are handed over to the EPA, their crew is not cleaning it up quickly, safely, or efficiently. In fact, we are just seeing the opposite. This federal agency has been dragging its feet. There are not a lot of employees, but yet they have a tremendous budget, so they're overspending. So basically they are predominantly professional paper pushers that are not getting the job done, unfortunately. Although I do think there are some people there that care about doing what's right. It's just I don't think there are enough of them in order to handle these situations. So one of the bad things that the EPA has been doing, unfortunately, is they have been redeveloping land that were initially Superfund sites, but yet they are still on the national priorities list, which means that they should have never been redeveloped. And when we say redeveloped, what that means is, that means that a piece of property, whether it used to be from the federal government or from a private sector company, the majority of these that are redeveloped and sold via the EPA, they were predominantly originally owned by a private sector company and they could not afford to clean it up. And so they gave it to the EPA to handle it. Well, then the EPA, they set standards and regulations and specifically limits of what is considered lethal and not lethal. So just because something is not lethal doesn't mean that it cannot harm you in general and that it won't cause a problem in your health later on down the road. So what the EPA has been doing, what we have discovered from looking into all this, is that the EPA has been redeveloping land that was initially owned by private sector companies and they could not afford to clean it up. So then it was allotted or given to the EPA to handle it. The EPA said, well, it's not really that lethal, or it's not lethal, it's just a lower level. But we're going to sell it to somebody to redevelop it and make money off of it. And so this land that has been redeveloped via the EPA, it has been sold to private property owners, meaning like places of residence, like people building a home for themselves and their families. And then also some of this property has been redeveloped for businesses. So needless to say, it's concerning because these properties and these sites that are listed on the national priorities list, if they are not completely cleaned up and not removed from this list, then they should never be redeveloped. Because the risk is too great to expose people to something that their body cannot handle. So this is why we go over these things, because regardless of whether you are working or retired or unemployed, these things can directly affect your health and the stability of your life. So technically that is a violation of workers' rights and of safety in general for the citizens of the United States. So FYI, this is an issue. Hopefully the EPA will get back on track. Unfortunately, what we have seen, it's one of those things that you would think that if a Democrat, whenever a Democrat is in office, you would think that the EPA would be like, oh, now that we have a Democrat in office, now we can clean all this stuff up. It's just the opposite. Usually under Democrats that are in office, hardly anything is cleaned up. And if anything, the list has continued to grow and quite rapidly, unfortunately, and these things are not being cleaned up. But unfortunately, the EPA's budget has just grown at a very rapid rate, but yet the work is not getting done. So that is a problem because that is our tax dollars basically going down a rat hole. So we do want to get our money's worth, but we also want to do the right thing and make sure these things are getting cleaned up. At this point, they are not. That's why this is concerning. So FYI, the list that we're looking at is the national priorities list, which again has about 1,200 to 1,400 Superfund sites on this list, and these are the worst of the worst. This is just a snippet of how many are actually located in the United States. The United States has about 40,000 Superfund sites littered across the United States. So just think about that. Think about the things that you are being exposed to and you don't even know that you are being exposed to these toxic, hazardous chemicals or water or vapor or dust or whatever the case may be. This is why I say knowledge is power. Because once you are aware of something, then you can make the best decision for yourself and your family to protect yourself and your family. So that's why we go over these things here. But, let's go ahead and dive in here. Let's get specific. So as usual, first of all, I'm going to list off the ones that are current, active, and still a problem, meaning they are still contaminating the environment and they are still toxic and hazardous to the human race as well as to livestock and just the environment in general. So the first one that is a problem is Anaconda Copper Mine, Smelter, and Refinery. It is located in the county of Cascade. The population there is 84,414. Soil and surface water are contaminated by arsenic, lead, and other heavy metals. This one has been on the list since 2011. The next one is Anaconda Company Smelter Site. It is located in Deer Lodge County. The population there is 9,421. Soil and groundwater are contaminated by arsenic, copper, cadmium, lead, and zinc. It has been on the list since 1983. The next one that is current and active is Basin Mining Area. It is located in Jefferson County. The population there is 12,085 people. Mine wastes are contaminated in Basin and Cataract Creeks, and the soils within the town of Basin are also contaminated. The contaminants can include arsenic, cadmium, copper, lead, and other metals, so basically you can't drink the water whatsoever. That would be very concerning. This one has been on the list since 1999. The next one that is current and active is Barker Hughesville Mining District. It is located in two counties, Cascade County and Judith Basin. Groundwater is, the groundwater, the sediment, and the surface water and soils are contaminated with metals, including zinc and arsenic. That's very concerning there. And that one has been on the list since 2001. The next one that is current and active is Carpenter Snow Creek Mining District. It is also located in the county of Cascade. The groundwater, soil, and water course are contaminated by arsenic and heavy metals. It has been on the list since 2001. The next one that is current and active is East Helena. It is located in the county of Lewis and Clark. The population there is 70,973 people. The soil, surface water, and groundwater are contaminated by lead and other heavy metals, as well as arsenic. This one has been on the list since 1984. The next one that is current and active is Flat Creek. It is located in the county of Mineral. The population there is 4,535 people. It says the soil, groundwater, and surface water are contaminated by arsenic, antimony, lead, and manganese from mine tailings, some of which were used as fill and construction material in the nearby town of Superior. So, it's very much stupid to use something that's contaminated as a filler and to use at a construction site, because you're just moving the hazardous chemicals and contaminants, or in this case, hazardous metals. You're just moving it to another site, so it's contaminating multiple areas. This one has been on the list since 2009. The next one that is current and active is Idaho Pole. It is located in Gallatin County. The population there is 118,960 people. The groundwater, sediment, surface water, and soil are contaminated by PCP, PAHs, and dioxins from a wood treatment plant. We have seen in times past where for some reason wood treatment plants tend to be really bad. You would think that they would have that process figured out so that it would not still continue to be an issue, but I guess we learn as we go along. This one has been on the list since 1986. The next one that is current and active is Libby Asbestos. It is located in Lincoln County. The population there is 19,677 people. Asbestos is contaminated from, I think I'm pronouncing this word correctly, vermiculite processing plants. This one has been on the list since 2002. The next one that is current and active is Libby Groundwater. It is also located in the county of Lincoln. The groundwater, sediment, surface water, and soil are contaminated by PCP, PAHs, and heavy metals from a wood and paper industry. I don't know why, but wood and paper manufacturing tends to be very toxic. So hopefully they can change that process so that it is not hurting people or the environment. This one has been on the list since 1983. The next one that is current and active is Lockwood Solvents. It is located in the county of Yellowstone. The population there is 164,731 people. The groundwater, sediment, surface water, and soil are contaminated by VOCs. This one has been on the list since 2000. The next one that is current and active is Milltown Reservoir Sediments. It is located in Missoula County. The population there is 117,922. The groundwater and reservoir sediments are contaminated by arsenic and copper from a historic mining activity. This one has been on the list since 1983. The next one that is current and active is Montana Pole. It is located in Silver Bow County. Let's see here. The population is 35,133. The groundwater, sediment, surface water, and soil are contaminated by PCP, PAHs, dioxins, and furans from a wood treatment plant. Again, wood treatment plants tend to be really bad, but I hope that they have learned the errors of their ways, especially when disposing of the waste. That is a aftermath effect of treating wood. This one has been on the list since 1987. The next one that is current and active, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, Mayut Industries. It is located in the county of Stillwater. Let's see, the population there is 8,963. The soils and groundwater were contaminated with hexavalent chromium. This one has been on the list since 1986. The next one that is current and active is Silver Bow Creek in Butte. It is located in Silver Bow County. Let's see here, the population is 35,133. The groundwater, the surface water, and the soil are contaminated with arsenic, copper, zinc, cadmium, and lead from mining and smelting. Silver Bow Creek and the Clark Fork River contain metals from the cities of Butte to Milltown. Mine tailings are in the creek and river, and they have caused fish kills in the river. So if something can kill a bunch of fish, then it can definitely hurt, harm, and kill people as well. This one was added to the list in 1983. The next and last one that is current and active is Upper 10 Mile Creek. It is also located in Lewis and Clark County. It says heavy metal and arsenic are contaminated from mining. This one has been on the list since 1999. There are none that have been cleaned up and good to go, which is very disappointing. They do have one that they are thinking about adding to the list. And so it's one of those things that they have identified a problem, but they can't make up their mind whether or not to add it to the national priorities list. So needless to say, this one, it's Burlington Northern Livingston Shop Complex. It is located in Park County. The population there is 17,191. And it says petroleum, hydrocarbons, and volatile organic compounds have contaminated the soil and the Livingston aquifer, so it has affected the water there. And here's the thing, this one was probably a problem for a long time. It was proposed to be added to the list in 1994, but yet the EPA is still dragging its feet. It has not cleaned it up, but it has also not added it to the Superfund National Priorities list. So it's just sitting there for years and years, and nothing is being addressed. So this is a perfect example of where federal agencies have a problem with federal bureaucracies. They drag their feet and they don't do their job. You know, it's one thing if the EPA spends all this money, all this taxpayer money, and they are actually cleaning this stuff up, because it does cost money to clean things up. And typically the worse something is, the more money it costs to to stop the problem, correct the problem, and repair the area. You know, it's not just about money, it's about doing the right thing. However, if the EPA is just spending all this money, which it is, and this is on a yearly basis, it is spending and spending and spending, but it's not cleaning this stuff up, that is a problem. You know, it's as I've said in times past, what is the point of identifying an issue if it's not going to be handled? That's where it becomes a problem. So it's one of those things that it's kind of like, what's the point of buying a turkey if you're not going to cook it for Thanksgiving? Like, what's the point of letting it sit raw in your freezer or your refrigerator, or even worse, let it sit out on the counter and let it just rot? It doesn't serve a purpose to do things like that. Well, that is exactly what is happening here with these Superfund sites, that they are not being addressed. So it's like, what's the point of identifying all these issues, whether it's from a chemical manufacturing plant, a wood treatment plant, or a landfill, or maybe something the U.S. Army messed up? What's the point of identifying the issue if it's not going to be corrected? It's just sitting there rotting. And here's the thing, when these types of problems leach into the soil, it also gets into the surface water, the groundwater, and sometimes it affects the water table, which technically can affect drinking water wells as well as your city's water supply. So again, I hope and pray that they correct these things and they don't just identify them, they correct it and they handle it. You know, a lot of this stuff, like whenever I first started researching this, it shocked me. Like I didn't know that we had this many problems in the environment. I knew that, you know, we have the EPA. I knew that we had Superfund sites because Oklahoma has a few. But I didn't know that we had 40,000 of them. Much less, you know, a really bad list of them, which is the national priorities list. You know, what's the point of having a list if it's not going to be corrected? If it's not going to be handled? So needless to say, as I research this stuff, I'm seeing a common trend. The common trend is, let's let the government handle it. And there are some things that the government should handle, but if it's not handling it appropriately and correctly, I think Congress needs to call them out on it because Congress has the power of the purse. It's Congress that approves and decides whether or not to approve all these different budgets for all these different federal agencies. I think we need to pump the brake on this and say, hey, you've been spending a lot of money. Where is your work? What have you actually accomplished? See, because here's the thing. A lot of these Superfund sites, they were caused prior to the 1980s. A lot of them. We know that to be true. But what's interesting is that, you know, the technology has changed. It has gotten better and tremendously better. So things that were causing a problem prior to the 1980s and causing toxic hazardous waste, it shouldn't still be causing that much of a problem because our technology and our inventions have improved over the years. Just think about what changed from the 80s to the 90s. Then what changed from the 90s to the early 2000s. Then think about what has changed from the early 2000s to our day and age. So, I mean, that's several years, that's many years that these sites have just sat there and they're not being addressed. So my personal opinion, I've said this before and I'll close with this, my personal opinion is that the government hire companies in the private sector that they specialize in cleaning up toxic hazardous waste. I think they should employ them because the EPA can't handle this. You would think the EPA would hire the best and the brightest, but considering how many things are not being handled, this is where it starts to look like they are just professional paper pushers and they're not actually doing their job. They may be the cream of the crop in terms of scientists and things of that nature, but if they're not actually doing their job, then they are stealing from their employer, which is us, the American people. You know, it would be like if you have a worker that shows up to work and they punch the clock every day, but they don't actually do anything. They don't actually do the work. Well, that is called thieving, and that is stealing from an employer, and that is exactly what the EPA is doing in regards to our tax dollars. Because they're making it seem like, we care about the environment. Okay, that's great. If you care about the environment, get a grip. Actually handle this stuff. Like make a checklist, and we want to see some things be deleted from this list so that way we know they are cleaned up and good to go and they are not causing a problem to the environment, because whatever causes a problem in the environment is what can definitely hurt and harm you and me. Because people are part of the environment. Human beings are at the top of the food chain. So being that we are at the top of the food chain, we have a responsibility to be good stewards of this planet and to do what is right. And at this point in time, not a whole lot of good is happening within the EPA. And this is not just purely a Democrat issue, although whenever a Democrat is in office, you know, they very much overinflate the budget of the EPA, but yet they don't get a lot of work done. The only thing that they do like to do whenever there is a Democrat in office, they like to pass all these rules, laws, and regulations that just hinder and cause a lot of problems in the private sector, and they just want to raise taxes on people. So they just want more money to do absolutely nothing, because they think that that is punching the clock and doing a good job, when in fact it is not. I truly hope and pray that the EPA gets back to its roots, where it was founded in the 1970s by a Republican president, and they really wanted to clean things up. I think that is a wonderful goal. That is a wonderful thing to aspire. I really think it is. I think it is a really good thing to do. But here's the thing. If we are not actually getting the work done, then it doesn't matter how good or fluffy or nice intention your goal is. If you're not accomplishing anything, then it's a waste of time. It's just a goal that sits on the shelf and collects dust. Let's actually get these things cleaned up because, our lives and our nation are worth it. Because if life has value, and it does, then these Superfund sites should be getting cleaned up. But at this point, they are not. That's where this becomes an issue. If they are going to collect millions of dollars and a whole lot more than that in terms of tax dollars, I better see some proof in the pudding, as they say. Because I think as American citizens, we have a right to know what's going on because it's our tax dollars. Needless to say, I really think, I'll say it again, the EPA, they should contract out every single one of these Superfund sites, assign them a company to clean it up and just get it done. Or maybe hire a university department that handles this. There are so many scientists and researchers that work at universities that they would love to get involved in this and clean it up. Not only would it clean it up and help our environment and keep us safe, but also they could document their research and say, hey, this is what we learned about this site. Here's what to do. Here's what not to do. I think that is a great endeavor. And I am all for spending our money doing that as well, but just sitting on it, I don't think so. It just makes no sense. I mean, let me use this as an analogy. Not cleaning up these Superfund sites is like you owning a home, you have termites infesting your house, they are eating up the wood, you have identified the problem, but yet you don't ever call an exterminator. And then you wonder why you still have termites and there's larvae everywhere and your house is falling apart. Well, here's the thing. Yes, you identified the problem, but you never got the right people in there to handle it and to exterminate the issue, to handle the issue. But yet you are complaining about your house. And now, not only is your house a problem, but so is your neighbor's because you did not take care of the problem that was affecting your home. So because you did not handle the infestation in your own home, once the termites ate up your home, they just went next door because that's what they do. They travel to where the food is. And most homes have one form of wood in their home, whether it's cabinets, the infrastructure, the framework, wood floors, whatever the case may be. So that is exactly what is going on within the EPA. They have identified the problem, but they haven't hired the right people to address it, so then that problem spreads. That's why so many of these Superfund sites, they start out in one area and they bleed out to other areas because it has not been contained or quarantined. I mean, it really shouldn't be this difficult to get a handle on it. So that's why sometimes the federal government is not good at doing these things because it's like the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing. And you would think that when they are spending our tax dollars, they would always want to know and should know what the right hand and the left hand is doing. This is a perfect example of, I don't want to say fraud and embezzlement, but definitely misappropriation of funds. That would be my guess. Because we're dealing with millions, if not billions of dollars now, because think about how much money the EPA has been given every year. But yet we still have these issues. And I'm not even taking into account inflation and things of that nature. So the EPA has been given billions of dollars over the years. And that's billions plural. Not just 1 billion, but billion after billion after billion over the years. And yet our Superfund site list is just growing. It's not shrinking. That's why I think the Congress needs to pump the brake and say, hey, you're not getting any more money until we figure out what exactly do you do with this money. What are your protocols, your standards, your procedures? How are you accomplishing things? And at what rate are you accomplishing these things? Like, what metrics are you setting in place so that you hold yourselves accountable to what you say you're going to do? Because at this point, it looks like there's nothing in place at all. Which I think is exactly what is happening. So needless to say, we definitely need to get a handle on this, hold the EPA accountable, but also encourage them to do what's right. Because I do not believe in shaming and blaming. I just believe in getting the job done and doing it right the first time. And if it's not done right the first time, don't worry about it, just correct it and move forward. Because I look at it this way, we have all failed at one thing or another, but failures should be looked at in a way that is, hey, this is what didn't work. I can still succeed. But if we stay stuck in failure mode, then we never give it another chance. We just throw up our hands and say, oh, well, that's it. No, it's not. There is always a new beginning. There is always something different and new and improved that we can do to handle anything on the face of this earth. But needless to say, I will go ahead and end this podcast. But as usual, until next time, I pray that you are happy, healthy, and whole, that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, and God bless.